A modern-day CFO and business leader's core function is to assist the CEO to drive the financial success of the business. So what we've actually done is to map out and identify the core set of skills and competencies that we are seeking to draw out through in terms of this case study competition. So in terms of the marking criteria, we have mapped out the core Acumen areas to assist the business drive financial success from a strategic point of view. There will be three key areas. There is strategic analysis, strategic choice, as well as strategy implementation. So we are actually trying to judge and evaluate the extent to which you can assist a business to analyze its external and internal environment, but at the same time present a range of options that are available to management, but at the same time come up with clear-cut recommendations in terms of how to move the business forward. If you look at the marking guidelines, you will notice in terms of the problem-solving Acumen areas, the very first one says strategic analysis. Now I'm reading downwards, vertically. Under strategic analysis, there are two key things that we are looking for there: prioritization and focus. There are some weightings assigned to that particular section which you can look across in terms of the role there that is presented. What do we mean by prioritization? You will be confronted, you'll be faced with a range of issues. Now, keep in mind, every board of directors, they are always pressed for time. There's always so much that needs to be attended to, but usually there won't be enough time to address all these issues. Now, so when we talk about prioritization and focus, we are looking at your ability to look at the business from outside, from inside, as we've already discussed, understand its challenges, and be able to say, out of these top 12 or top 15 or top 5 issues that have been presented to me in terms of this case study, here are the 4 that I think, or here are the 3 that I think, or here are the 6 that I think that the board should be preoccupied with in terms of the upcoming board meeting. Now, but apart from that, we would like to see how you prioritize those issues. It takes one thing to say these are the 5 issues or the 4 issues that the board should preoccupy itself with. But the next thing is, in what order should these issues be prioritized? We'll be looking to see under strategic analysis, are you able to focus the attention of the board on the range of things that you believe will make the major difference to the business and help the board stay away from side issues that would not make a significant difference in relation to the rest of the other issues, and also prioritize for the board to understand the order in which those things would need to be dealt with. That is actually what we consider to be strategic analysis and what we'll be looking for from you in terms of prioritization and focus. The next skill competency area which we'll be looking is your ability to evaluate choices. Now, evaluating choices implies you're able to come up with options that are available. Now, if you look at our marking criteria there, we've put the impact and options evaluation. So we want you, for each issue that you've analyzed and prioritized, to actually identify the range of options that are available to management. Now, to identify these options, you can look at common sense, you can look at your own creativity, you can look at actually what you've actually learned from school, from all the various rules and techniques like we spoke about. Present a range of options, obviously subject to the word limit, that you believe should be considered before coming up with a final recommendation. But apart from that, what is the impact of each option? Now, keep in mind that you have previously done a SWOT analysis of the company, so every option needs to be evaluated in terms of the extent to which it reinforces or can be supported by the strengths of the business, the extent to which it operates within the operating constraints of the business, so to speak. Maybe it corrects the weaknesses of the business, it actually assists, complement, or go after certain opportunities, or addresses certain threats which you have already identified as part of your environmental scan. So we're looking to see what is the quality of the options which are actually presented, and how will this subsequently evaluated in terms of their impact in terms of each one on the business. But the last part which we've actually identified, which is actually what we call strategic implementation. This is actually where we see how you have, through the analysis that you've done as part of the choices, presented the courses of action or the best course of action. Now, keep in mind, we'll be expecting that a good recommendation should logically flow through from the quality of the analysis that you've done as part of your strategic choices. But we'll also like to see what exactly are you putting forward to the board. You need to justify that recommendation. Why do you think this is the best recommendation for the board? Now, we would be looking very closely at the justification. Is the justification supported by the quality of the analysis that you've undertaken? Does it operate within the operating constraint of the business? Does it move the business forward in terms of the vision and mission and the strategic ends that had been you had identified as part of your environmental analysis? But apart from that, apart from the justification, we want to see how you would go about. It is one thing to come up with a clear-cut, responsible course of action. It's something else to specify the specific action plans or timelines associated with those action plans that you believe the board needs to implement in order to take the business forward. We would also like to see, from your understanding of the business or different role parties as defined in the case study, who are the parties that you believe should be accountable for carrying out a specific recommendation or a specific set of action plans. So on the vertical side, those are the things that we're looking for. Now let me take some time to try and clarify horizontally. If you look at the top bar of the market metrics, you'll see a range of areas that we have denoted that we will be looking to evaluate your work along each of these three areas. There's what is called finance and technical. There's what is called diversity and business. There's what we have there as ethics and people. There is presentation, in brackets, questions and answers. There is innovation and integration. There is decisiveness and leadership. If you read vertically, you will notice the weights that we've assigned to each one of those. So vertically, we're saying technical and financial constitutes 15% of the weighting. Diversity and business constitutes 20% of the weighting. Ethics and people constitutes 15% of the weighting. Presentation, 20% of the total weighting. Innovation and integration, 10%. Decisiveness and leadership is the other 20%. If you're going to read horizontally, you will notice we are actually putting forward that 15% of the total marks actually relates to strategic analysis, how you analyze the strategic context of this business. 45% actually relates to your ability to generate options and how you've evaluated those options. 40% relates to strategic implementations, how you go about implementing. So whether you read horizontal or vertical, it all sums up to 100%. Now let me take some time to try and explain or clarify what we mean by finance and technical. You've actually spent some time at school as part of your professional course. You've learned some very technical financial accounting, management accounting, cost accounting, auditing, be it internal auditing or external auditing. You've learned a range of tools and techniques, from activity-based costing to activity-based management to process costing, all the way to international financial reporting standards, international auditing standards. You've learned techniques and tools and principles in terms of taxation. You've gone all the way and learned tools and techniques from a capital structure point of view. So here's actually what we refer to. We expect you to go back and invest, dig from all the tools and techniques and accounting principles and conventions right through. Draw those various principles, identify the issues that the CFO is confronting or the board of the company is confronting. Display to us that you can actually meaningfully draw those various principles and show how you can technically bring the issues that management is faced with to light in terms of the possible solutions that could come about. Now, that could be helpful in terms of the analysis of the situation, in terms of coming up with options, or in terms of coming actually recommendations. So, in a nutshell, technical and financial means, can you apply the technical accounting concepts, process costing, job costing, activity-based costing, international accounting rules, taxation, all the way to financial management? Can you actually bring everything you've learned from there and actually untangle and unpack this case study to throw some light in terms of how solutions are potentially going to be brought to bear? The next area of assessment, which is what we call diversity and business, like we pointed out, it actually constitutes 20% of the marks. Here's what we're trying to identify your capacity to not only apply technical accounting and finance jargon, but whether you really understand how a business executive, an entrepreneur, a business leader would need to bring this together in order to make things work. So in essence, here's what we're referring to. By business acumen, we're saying, are you able, in the context of the opportunities and threats that you have identified that the business needs to deal with, in the context of your internal analysis of the business, are you able to identify the right fit between the external environment and the internal environment of the business? Are you able to identify opportunities to enhance the earnings of the business? Are you able to identify ways of dealing with the strategic threats? Can you identify or evaluate what type of organizational structure should be put in place in order to enable this business to go after its opportunities and deal with its threats? Now, by displaying not only how the technical accounting skills actually work in business, but how it can add value to a business, save costs, enhance efficiencies, get the business to be leaner, you are actually displaying your business acumen. But keep in mind, we've also labeled that particular column business and diversity. By diversity, here's what we're looking for. As a CFO aspirant, you should be fairly conversant with business language. You should be fairly conversant with what is reported in the business press, from Financial Mail to Economist to all these magazines or journals that come out and reporting about issues on share price, on risks that affect different companies. We constantly hear about news from Bloomberg channels. We hear about Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. All these we're flooded every day with a range of information about what goes on in business. Here's what we're looking for. Diversity actually means, can you, in the context of the issues that you're faced with, can you read from modern day business journals and identify areas that we could learn from and that could meaningfully add value in terms of how to solve the actual problems that are presented to you? Now, keep in mind, we expect you to quote credible sources, and we expect you to actually point out how it can meaningfully assist to solve the problems that the company is faced with. That's from a diversity point of view. All right, the next category in terms of what we intend to use in terms of how to evaluate is what is called ethics on people. Like we mentioned before, the range of issues that management or the board is faced with, some of them are actually interwoven, or they are actually embedded by some very serious ethical dilemmas that management is actually exposed to, and for which the board actually needs concrete answers or concrete solutions with respect to. Now, by ethics, we're referring to, for instance, what we typically call professional behavior, integrity, professional competence, and due care, confidentiality, objectivity. These are all ethical principles that would be embedded in most of the professional codes of ethics, especially for the various professional accountancy bodies, and obviously universally applied. But apart from that, ethics goes beyond just professional ethics. There's also what is called business ethics, issues of human rights, issues of dignity, issues of justice. We are living in a world where more and more a lot is expected of businesses, what is commonly typically has been classified as corporate social responsibility. So we are actually trying to find out, a modern day CFO understands that driving the financial success of business does not begin and end with the accounting and the finance side of things. At the center of that all is people. Now, in a typical business, people, broadly speaking, would include suppliers are people, customers are people, shareholders are people, employees, which is the largest chunk of it under this particular area, would be people. But keep in mind, government is represented by people. Now, so what we actually refer to here is, are you able to look at the strategic context of the business, to look at the issues that the business is faced with, and try to put the people dimension? We understand that the overarching goal of business is to drive the financial success. In many ways, you consider that to mean to create shareholder value. That's taken for granted. We understand that. But are you able to put the people dimension to things? Can you allow the business to undertake courses of actions that would create value for shareholders but damage its relationship with its society, with its customers, with its employees, and all the rest? So can you identify all the ethical principles that would typically confront a strategist, so to speak, or a business leader, and show us how those behavioral issues actually need to have some form of role or bearing with respect to actually what you're analyzing from a commercial point of view? So we would expect that you identify the ethical issues, You have to tell us why you believe those are ethical issues, and then display the extent to which they are linked to all these ethical principles and standards, and come up with clear-cut recommendations. That is actually what we'll be looking to see in terms of this particular section. But apart from that, the next criteria talks to presentation. It's one thing to come up with all these very report which technically is sound, from a business acumen point of view is sound, but the order of your presentation, the quality of your presentations. If we ask you to present certain information in the form of graphs and pie charts or briefing notes, we actually expect you to follow those guidelines. Present your work in a manner. Keep in mind you're reporting to a board of directors. They need to be able to receive the report and within a short space of time understand, logically speaking, what is it you're presenting to them. So the overall quality of your presentation is going to be a significant part of how you're going to be assessed. But apart from that, we've also summarized that the questions and answers is also going to be part. Obviously, during the stage 1 of the competition, we will not be in a position to ask you questions and get your answers to those questions. But we would continue to use this assessment criteria as part of round 2 and round 3 and round 4. So we will continue to judge how you present yourself on stage and how you take questions, how you deal with impromptu questions that are going to come from the judges and the rest. But at this stage, in terms of your stage 1, you're looking to present a report that is free from say grammatical errors, free from calculation errors, so to speak. If you have used appendices, we expect that the appendices should be tied back into the report. The quality of the analysis should be such that it's easy for a reader to navigate your report and actually assign you marks, and which is something which is also going to be pleasant to the board of directors to read. That's actually what we are looking for under presentation. Now, the next category in terms of the area, in terms of what you're going to be assessed, what is called innovation integration. We are looking for creativity. We expect you to work within teams. We expect you to have some serious debates within your teams in terms of the range of options that are available. But at the end of the day, very, very good reports or good answers are answers that bring to bear some degree of creativity. You know, we're living in a world where it takes your ability to discern patterns in data. For instance, we could give you information where a particular issue needs to be analyzed, and if you're going to look at that issue in isolation, you'll find that there are a range of issues, narrative as well as data, that is embedded in that issue that has some underpinnings or connections to another issue. So when we talk about innovation, were you able to creatively look at the issues before you, see where they interlink, identify recommendations which if implemented in one situation, whilst it addresses a particular situation, may open the business to risks in terms of other situations that are yet to be analyzed? Are you able to come up with ideas that have not even been considered within the framework of the technical skills, the business acumen, which you have already been assessed? Things that like cut through, breaking in terms of what things that an examiner or the board of directors listening to this will be able to say, oh wow, this is a perspective. That's why typically we would argue that it doesn't work that well if your full team is made up of all individuals who all come from a particular discipline. Creativity comes from a situation where you have a range of perspectives from your team, maybe a public relations expert within the team, somebody who is studying engineering, somebody who is studying accounting and finance. You have the opportunity to consult with your mentor, the opportunity to consult with other individuals, as long as they do not fall within the areas of exclusions that have been defined in the case study, to hear different ideas in terms of how you could bring your creativity on the board. So those are the things that we look. Can you integrate the various parts of the case study? See where the issues link. Can you come up with new ideas which have not even been considered by the examining team or by the board of directors, and meaningfully justify those elements in a way that fits in with what the board is actually faced with? The very last area in terms of how you're going to be assessed is what we have on which is what is called decisiveness and leadership. Now, this is what we mean. If you notice, most of the marks, they sit under recommendations. We understand that you've evaluated a range of courses of actions that are available to management. We do not want candidates that sit on the fence. Decision making is inherently difficult. You're faced with uncertainties. We get that. We understand that the options that you've evaluated, each one has its pros and cons. We get that. But the beauty of this is, in a modern day environment, decisions don't come as linear where you say A plus B is equal to C. Decisions in the corporate world, they typically are multidimensional. Any particular decision taken would open the business to certain challenges. So we are actually looking, are you able to take the right balance and say, despite all these challenges, this is the best course of action available to management? Can you justify that? Can you, as part of your action plans, cater for the weaknesses in the recommendations that you've actually put forward and put it in a way that leaves no doubt to the board of directors or to management of the business as to what is it you are prescribing in terms of the solution to that particular issue? So that is the quality of what we are looking from a decisiveness point of view.